want to first apologize for this deck because as a procrastinator, I wasn't sure if I was going to speak English or Chinese today. But then knowing that Jameson was coming, this for sure is going to be in English because there's no way it's going to be Chinese. And so, but part of the deck is still in Chinese. You know, as I started writing in Chinese. And I'm like, no way, Jameson's coming, there's no way. And of course, and then Jordan's been in Taiwan longer than I have. But I grew up in Taiwan. I spent my baby years, grade school years in Taiwan. I did my undergrad and startup venture capital, mostly all in California. My family had moved to the Bay Area in the 70s, and we've been there since, the past 50 years. But yeah, I started writing this because of, having come back to Taiwan. I was in Hong Kong the past 5 years. I just moved back, as many of us, end of January since Chinese New Year. And it was the first time I really stayed in Taiwan for a long time. The last 4 or 5 months. But I didn't get to fly anywhere. I really had a chance to meet local entrepreneurs and really think about, really reflect, what I've learned throughout these past 20 years of innovation and startup. And I started writing, and this list came up to like 25 and 30 and 40 things, and today, I'm just going to share 10. If you find this interesting, I'm going to share the next 10. A little about myself. I started, my entrepreneurial career started with that device on the left. It was 2004, I was in the Valley, the E thing just had come on the scene. Long story short, I got sold at Barnes & Noble, that became the Barnes & Noble Nook. 2007, I joined HTC, I was there from 2007 to 2014. I shipped the first Android phone, I started the first Vive, and then went back to investing and came back to build this crypto phone called Exodus. There are 2 books here that document the story. This one documents the story of how I started the Vive, and this one, part of it, documents how I started the HTC Exodus. As an investor, I've been a part of 3 funds. Right now, Base Capital is my 3rd fund. My first fund is President's Capital. My second fund, or simultaneous, was Horizons Ventures, which is Li Kai-shing's venture fund, which is why I was in Hong Kong. I've invested in over 100 companies. Here's some of my spread, like 65% of my companies I've invested in, mostly in North America. But I did quite a few deals in Israel and Finland, London, Berlin, these countries. I did a bit in Taiwan. These are the 3 notable ones I've done in Taiwan. I have done nothing in China. I know nothing about China. And so that's me as both an entrepreneur and venture investor. Okay, the first 3 points. The first 3 points are, I just want to set the context around innovation and culture. The context around innovation and culture, so this is nothing to do with COVID, it's just general kind of framework to how to think about innovation. So this is the Chinese part that I had to translate. And what this thing is, it's an innovation now. One of my partner Alfred is also a mentor. He just said, follow the money. And what this is where does innovation come from in a country? Right here on the bottom left, you see university research, government investment, like M.Div, of course, CVC, corporate venture capital, you got angels, you got venture capital, you got private equity, hedge funds. And I have experience venture capital, angel, and corporate. I've done these three. I think predominantly a lot of us, like Jameson, he's done a lot of angels. And a lot of, right now the trends of Silicon Valley people coming back to Taiwan, they've succeeded, they sold their company, they become angels, they primarily have done this. But this is what I call smart money, right? Which means there's such thing as dumb money. And I'll have to talk about that. But this is where the money is. And, I talk about examples, I talk about, the type of risk you're taking. But I've done these three, and that's what I'm going to talk about. The next page is really just like types of economies, And again, sorry, it's too many words on a page. It breaks all the rules of presentations. But yeah, too much information, sorry. On this, we all want to be on this quadrant, right? This is, Silicon Valley, investors work hard, they create a lot more value than they deserve. There's a give back culture, right? Guys like have sold their companies, they want to give back, right? They want to invest, right? Of course, that's an effective innovation economy. On the bottom right, you have, terrible governance, bad regulations, there's a lot of corruption, and there's no concept of property rights, so a lot of exploitation, right? On the left side, I think Taiwan is somewhere here. Right now. Taiwan has been here before in the semi kind of era, but here on the upper left is what people call the innovation theater. Lots of sincere people working on, but often working on the wrong stuff. And the scale is too small, right? Taiwan is a small country, and sometimes we need to focus. On the bottom left is, this is also where you don't want to be. You don't create big wins. It's intense, you don't create wealth, and you don't get the ball rolling. And there's a lot of vanity investors. They just invest because it's cool, because it's fun, but they don't understand that it's a lot of hard work. The third thing, how many people have watched The Office before? Actually, how many people work in a big company, or mostly here people are startups, but this Purveyor's principle is a principle about mostly big corporate culture. How many people have worked in big corporate culture before? Okay, I think you guys will find this entertaining. Okay, and it talks about the hierarchical structure in big corporate culture, right? And there's primarily two promotional patterns going on. And this is probably very familiar to everybody. At the top, you have sociopaths, middle clueless, bottom losers. And clueless and losers, I think sociopath is something that you understand. It is what it means. But clueless and losers kind of are probably different from way of thinking. So losers are not really losers. Losers are just people who got the shorter end of the stick, right? They don't know how to negotiate the proper economic deal or their salaries for themselves, right? And so they live their lives on nights and weekends, right? They just kind of get by work, 9 to 5, and I'm just going to do the minimum. I need to get my salary and then move on. And I'm just excited about the weekend. The clueless are actually the people who do the most work, right? They're clueless because they don't know how much value they actually bring to the company. They're clueless, like, whichever lawman says, do this, and like, yeah, we're gonna go do it. But they don't really understand what's going on in the marketplace. They don't understand the audience, they don't understand, people, they don't understand the product. But they actually work so hard that the sociopaths love them, right? Because they get to pawn them off, right? So there are two promotional patterns going on, right? And so there are guys that, losers that overperform, right? They get promoted to the clueless, right? Because the sociopaths want the clueless to, get the work done. And then the second promotional pattern, there are losers who know they can't perform, but they're actually taking more risks. But then they get noticed by the sociopaths, and then they're on the fast track to getting hired, getting promoted, right? So this is general corporate culture. I've worked at big companies too. And this kind of behavior and culture is very fundamental. It's not just in Taiwan, but any kind of hierarchical structure, it happens that way. So it is all about culture, right? And which is why, I'm excited about startups, because anytime you do a startup, you're starting with 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 people, you get to define your own culture. You get to change kind of this somewhat destructive behavior, somewhat dysfunctional behavior, and you get an opportunity to start changing that culture. I'm going to skip this. I'll talk about this. Valve has one of the most interesting corporate cultures that I've come across. Having been at Vive or Steam, they literally hire people, and once you come into the company, they don't hire, say, I want a product manager or product marketing person. They hire you in because they like you. And then once you come in the company, you kind of figure out what project you want to do. You start meeting people, and then, it's very serendipitous, right? You look at a project, you go join this, and if you don't like it, you just grab your table and go to another group, right? Even the CEO, Gabe, he literally moves from group to group. He has no office. He has a desk that he pulls up on whichever project. And hence, and this is the gaming people tell me, they can produce AAA titles with a fifth of the employees versus an EA or Activision, right? They become much more efficient, But that's their culture, right? And some people say, oh, because they're a gaming company, they can do that. And that may be true, right? But nevertheless, they've created one of the most, probably the most interesting culture at that scale that I've seen. 0.456 of the 3 F's. Okay. 0.4 is just to fail. There's such a shame in Taiwan about failing. People are so afraid of failing, and once you fail, you're done. Kind of thing. And out of all the countries I've been in, I find Israel to be one of the more interesting ones. And every person you meet, you go, oh, this is my 5th startup, this is my 6th startup, this is my 8th startup, this is my 9th, right? And startup is is like a national sport for them, right? But they're not afraid of failing, right? Failing is just one way of doing something that doesn't work, right? And hence, in the Valley, you hear terms like fail often. You hear words like reload, release early, release often, right? You hear words like constant betas. That's because we don't know. We just ship and then kind of learn, and then we kind of have to figure, think on our feet and see what happens once we ship, right? And so I'm quoting this thing from the New Testament, right? Because streets narrow is the gate, which leadeth unto the life, and few will find it. And this has to be true, right? Because this is just another way of saying Thomas Edison is saying, there's 10,000 ways that things don't work, and only one way that it will work, right? And so failing, most of us will fail, right? Most of my venture investments will fail, right? But the thing is, what do you learn from that, right? And this is from the scenes on the, I don't know if you've heard of these life, one of probably top 5 favorite thinkers I have. And he says, never pathologize failure. Only pathologize the refusal to try. So don't get too caught up. Don't think you're crazy because you fail or you're not good enough or you have some shame, right? But you should be shamed if you don't try, right? And the thing about failure, one of my LPs asked me how do I judge entrepreneurs when they come to pitch, I have something called the persistence mileage. It's a little bit like, the grit thing that James was talking about. But I kind of look at this entrepreneur and see, how far can he go before he gives up, right? Or this entrepreneur, you can tell this guy will never give up no matter what happens. And so I kind of make this guess of, how much grit, how much persistence, how far he will go before he gives up. 5 minutes, I'm going to skip this. This is the one point I got for startups here to take away. If you hear nothing from my talk, this is the page. Taiwan entrepreneurs or Taiwan kind of employees, they don't think, they would rather have a higher salary than no equity, and compromise their current salary. And there's something fundamentally wrong about that because we're in the business of building the future, right? And equity, of course, is sacrificing something right now for the betterment of the future, for owning something for some better reward in the future, right? And so there are a lot of problems that will happen if employees or key executives in the company are not fighting for equity, right? Again, it goes back to the terrible culture because one sociopath owns the whole company, right? And then, of course, the ball starts rolling into that type of behavior. But the other thing is, I'll skip this. The other thing is the cap table, right? I have a friend telling me like, oh, he started a company here, he's from the Valley, he started a company here. They don't really fight for equity, but he says he wants to raise Silicon Valley money. And I says, no, there's no way you're gonna raise Silicon Valley money because your cap table was wrong, right? And if your cap table is not right, you will not raise money from foreign investors, right? If your team, your executives, or your key people are not incentivized correctly, there's no way you're going to raise money from foreign smart money, right? Because, again, we're about building the future, right? And you need a team to build that future. And you need a team to have skin in the game to build that future together. I'm going to skip this. 7, 8, 9. It's just about how you talk. It's about speech. Speech is the most fundamental thing that regulates us, that generates new ideas, that challenges people, that debates people. And I want to talk about 3 things about speech. 1, speak up, right? There's one thing I learned when I went to China in 2008, right? I realized that their corporate culture was very, very flat, and I started wondering why. And this may be controversial, but the reason why I think so is because the Cultural Revolution destroyed Confucian ideas, right? And if you look at that time during the startup culture, it was great for startup culture because it was very flat, right? And if you look at right now, there are many more female venture investors in China than anywhere in the world. They were able to destroy kind of that hierarchical system, at least in the beginning. And so this is about how you talk in companies. 100% of the people in here know that when you talk to your boss or to your employees, you censor your own language. You have this internal censor, right? Like, I would dare you to see, like, how do you talk to your boss? Is it posture talk, power talk, baby talk, game talk? I mean, we're not going to go through these, but you guys can read about it. But how are you talking to your coworkers? what are you doing in your meetings? Are you speaking up? Right? What are you doing in conferences? Right? This is one of my favorite images in the conference. This is how I feel every day I go on Facebook. Right? You got this guy walking, you know, we're all fools. You know? And he's gaining everything, right? But how are you, you know, when you go to these conferences, it should be more like this, right? It should be kind of this space in which is I think why co-working space is designed what it is. You know, it allows you to get coffee and talk and real talk, right? Be honest, right? Be open, you know, challenge each other, right? It's so basic and fundamental that, you know, you don't see this in many corporate settings. Entrepreneurs have to watch what you say to yourself. Entrepreneurs are the most loneliest people I know. I've invested in you, I know. You guys come to me and talk to me about all your problems, I also know. And hence, your mental health is really important, right? And if you think about it, most of the day, the person you talk to the most is yourself. That person in the mirror that you talk to. And you have to watch what you say to yourself. Which is why I started this podcast with, she's a model, she's an actress, and I wanted to support her for this because, you know, in Asia, mental health is not really recognized. And she's one of the few that says, hey, I want to come out and talk about it. You know, we need to have this conversation. We need frank speech. Okay, 1 minute. Last one, not the last one. Second, invest in communication. Okay, I'll just go quickly on this. Most startups also feel like products speak for themselves, right? You invest so much in products, you build a great product, and you spend 90% of your engineering on your product, and maybe 5% on marketing. I wrote this article on Business Weekly, which was one of the highest viewed articles that month. Because when I was at Verizon, we had invested in actually Beyond Meat's competitor. This is interesting because Beyond Meat's technology was built by a Taiwanese guy. But it took this American guy to market it, to tell the story, to really invest in the communication, to take it to market. Right? The competitor that we invested in, Possible Foods, their technology was better, but they didn't communicate, right? And then once Beyond Meat took it public, the market really, at that point, only had space for one big kind of Beyond Meat type of company. And so they took all the market share, right? And they become, a food company is trading like a software company, 20, 30x. It's pretty insane. Skip. Finally, point number 10, this is something that Jameson and I and several others are starting. It is about talent management, right? I see myself as a venture therapist and a talent manager, right? There's a lot of talent in Taiwan, right? We're here to help coach, help mentor, help build as well. And so we have a website, Lafayette.tw. Go up there, sign up. We want to talk to you. We want to get to know what you're good at. We want to build stuff with you. Thank you. This is my fund, Raise Capital. That's me. Thank you.